Hello, we're here in South Somerset, New Ryden Farm with Philip Vaux of D. Vaux & Sons. We're here to look at the potato lifting after a very difficult season and to see how they've got on and what Philip thinks of what we've been doing using our OptiYield program for the first time on this farm for this year. Philip, what's been your conclusions from this year?
Yeah, I mean, we've changed our regime from what it was. We've been using solid fertilizers and some foliar seaweed products and liquid nitrogen for later in the season to more of your products this year. We want to be able to try and reduce the amount of fertilizers that we're using at planting or at mid-season.
As you're renting a lot of ground, as many people do when they're growing potatoes, it fits potentially quite well with our approach, which is to feed the crop rather than putting too much fertilizer in the soil in the hope that the plant can find it.
Yeah, no, that's quite right. We always, maintain, my father before maybe, maintain, give it plenty of muck under it to start with. It'll help the crop grow in difficult seasons like we've just had, very, very dry.
Yes, indeed. And the foliar program on the top allows you to tune that to suit the conditions.
Yep.
Especially where in a situation like this year, unirrigated, you've got very dry soils, a lot of that place fertilizer would be largely unavailable to the crop simply because there's no moisture in the soil to make it available. How have you found the change?
Well, the crops have looked very well. We've been using the consortium at planting, there's some Super Phos, and then we went on to the micronutrients for each field.
So the Symposium product, of course, is our multimicrobial product that you put down at planting on the seed. And I think you were using that instead of Amistar, which would be your normal application?
Yeah, we've been using Amistar on fields where we're fodder beet and potatoes in the rotation, so that it was just to reduce the amount of Rhizoctonia that we were getting in previous years. We've not used a consortium on fields where there's no roots in the rotation, but I think we probably should have done.
Okay, that's interesting. And how have the potatoes come out? Have they been clean, looking good?
Yeah, I mean, certain varieties have done better than others. The Taurus and the Tomino produced the numbers, but we just haven't got the size like we would hope for. But
then you've only had, how much, 40 millimetres of rain since March?
Since the beginning of March, we've had around about 40 mil of rain till the end of August, or when the weather broke here a few weeks ago.
And most of these crops are unirrigated?
Yes, we've only got one block of land that we can irrigate, which has yielded pretty well, really, considering. But the rest of the farm, we're using quite a bit of manure in the way of farmyard manure, pig muck and chicken litter, because we're doing a crisping variety for our suppliers where skin finish is not an issue.
Well, I've noticed that one of the characteristics of your cultivations is that you have good soil structure underneath the rows, which has allowed the root growth to penetrate further down, being aided by that Symposium product to root better and deeper. I think that's probably helped survive the drought better than it would have done. Would you agree?
Yes, I mean, it's one field we've got, which is a little way away from here on some fairly sharp sandy soil. Didn't have the consortium because it's not got roots in the rotation, and that crop is not going to yield us terribly heavy yields.
So Philip, we've seen the lifting here in the field of your Amanda and we've looked at the crop. So let's now go into your sheds and see what we find there. What do you expect to see?
A reasonable sized potato crop which otherwise would have been smaller than would have been expected if we hadn't used your program.
So Philip, these are the Amanda we've just been looking at in the field coming in. They look to be a nice even sample. As you said, there are a few smaller ones because it's been so dry, but what's your take on these?
I guess if we hadn't used your products, who's to say? I would have said, that the potatoes probably would have been a lot smaller. It's an even sample, and it's not oversized, and there's not too much undersize, which is quite good, really, because that can you can lose a lot of yield through undersize. And considering the conditions that we've had, weather-wise, I would say that the yield will be fair to middling. Without looking at exactly how many we've had off this field so far, once we finish the field, we'll know better what sort of yield we have had, really.
Yes, fair to middling's probably a bit of a result given this year.
Yeah, certainly is.
They look, I mean, I know it's not important for crisping, but they've got a nice even skin finish to them.
Yeah.
There's very little blemish on them.
Yeah.
And actually they're a nice looking sample.
Yeah, well, this is Amanda, which is a crisping variety as well as a chipping variety. It's the second year we've grown it. I still think it's got a place. I'm hoping that, it's what the factory wants. That we'll see when it gets to the factory and as to whether they like it or not.
Talking about next year, what's the plan for next year?
Well, we're going to be carrying on growing potatoes and aim to try and improve on inputs, keeping the inputs down as low as possible because the returns don't go up to correspond with it. The cost of seed is quite expensive, so we've got to try and make some savings somewhere along the line.
So if we can drive things like the amount of fertiliser you're putting in the ground down, so that we're feeding the crop and not the ground, then that would be an advantage.
That's what we've got to try and do, yeah. We've got to do what we can to help it.
Yes, and you've obviously offset that with your attention to detail you put into cultivation and the manures that you're putting in as well, which all help soil structure and manures, and that sets the scene. I think for our part, what we've tried to do is add in inputs like the symposium with the superphosphate planting, which really help that early rooting and early vigour, get the thing coming out the ground faster and improve that deep rooting, and then to supplement that with things like the foliar nitrogen, the foliar phosphate and potash during the season, and lastly, when it was getting really stressed, putting on things like the sea spray just to try and take off the edge of the crop stress.
Yeah.
Would you agree that?
Yeah, I would say so. The program that we've used this year would have certainly helped. Had we not used it, I dread to think what we would have had. It would have been complete disaster. I think the disaster has been avoided by putting on what we've done so far this year. We've got to work on it, for the next year to see what we're going to do for next year. I mean, none of us know what the weather's going to give us, so we've got to help it as much as we can.
We never know what's happening season to season. This year's been incredibly dry. Previous season was very wet and cloudy. So the flexibility of our system and the resilience it builds into the crop means that we can hopefully maintain the yield year on year, no matter what the weather and the climate throws at us. If next year turns out to be, by miracle, one of the good years, what's the sort of yield you'd be looking for from your Amanda, from your Taurus, from your other varieties to put a smile on your face?
I guess if we're knocking sort of 17 to 20 tons an acre for a crisping yield, it's pretty good. If it's more than the 20 tons an acre, then we're on a bonus. But the problem being then I expect we'll end up with everybody will have a big yield and then the price will drop out of the market completely, although most of what we sell is done under contract.
So if we can help you achieve good yields in a tough year, then that's the best of all because everybody else is doing badly and you're doing well.
Yeah, well, one would hope so, yeah.
Great.